Well, lots of companies reported on the US markets overnight. There were better than expected results for the likes of Dow, Delta Airlines and Boeing, and Facebook smashed expectations with a 72% increase in first quarter sales. But the markets didn't respond that well. I'm joined by Adam Carr from Business Spectator. Adam, why weren't the markets pleased with the results overnight?
Well, look, there were some, I guess because earnings were mixed, there were some good reports. However, there were some negative reports. AT&T, certainly over in Europe, we saw Ericsson with disappointing reports. And that wasn't sufficient, I think, when we saw some of the positive earnings reports that you mentioned, when we saw negative economic data, specifically housing, new home sales in the US collapsed basically about 14% when the expectation was for a lift, a modest lift, but a lift nevertheless. And that's got people wondering whether the US housing recovery is sustainable or whether it's, is it over? And I just think punters are worried about that. Sentiment took a dive, and those handful of positive earnings reports just weren't sufficient.
Now, one of the big things people were looking at overnight was the Australian dollar, because we had inflation figures coming in better than expected yesterday. How did the dollar do?
Well, look, it dropped pretty much a full cent after the inflation figures, because I guess the view out there is that they weren't strong enough to really push the RBA into hiking rates. I mean, look, even if the number was strong, I don't think the RBA would be hiking rates. They'd look through inflation. But look, the market reacted. After that 1 cent drop, it hasn't done a lot. It's kind of sidelined for the rest of the session, and it's hovering at about 92.87 as we speak.
Now, one fascinating fact that emerged overnight is that crude oil stocks are at their highest level in 83 years, a sign of the fracking boom perhaps in the US, because they're at capacity now in terms of storage in the States. What's driving that huge increase in crude stockpiles, and what does that mean ultimately for consumers?
Well, ultimately for consumers, it's pretty good. It should see prices at the pump fall. Now, as to more supply, etc. Now, as to what's driving it, I think there are a couple of factors: alternative sources of fuel, so rising use of LNG, fracking, shale gas, etc. Ultimately, we're seeing crude stocks rise, and we're also seeing crude come on the market from places like Libya, etc. So the market is generally awash with oil. I should note that 83 years sounds incredible, and that's great on paper, but we're still only really ever talking about 2 months supply for the US.
Okay, there you go, Adam. Thanks very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.